What's up, Twitch? Stream time again. Which I should open up the stream yet. I never get this thing ready ahead of time. All right. So today, first of all, big news. Yesterday, I'm gonna call it a soft launch. Soft launched Deploy the Fleet. I posted it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And so sort of started the ball rolling here. There's nothing where it's like you just posted all those things and you sit and wait. There's still a lot of work to be done, both technically on the development side, but also on the um, get the word out side. Like I need to get into a whole bunch of forums and let people know, constantly be making content around this to share with people, to make them aware of the service. And just like I said, we need people to use it so I can get feedback and make it better. So that's what we're working on. But before we do that today, what we're going to talk about is I bought my first real Internet of Things device. I have been for, let's see, it's 2020, 15 years, even longer, almost 2 decades. I have been working on I was working on the Internet of Things before the term really even became mainstream. I think the term predates my involvement in it, like the official term, but nobody knew what Internet of Things was. I'm going to say even 10 years ago. Like most people had no idea what you were talking about. And so prior to that, even I was building, writing software, writing firmware, building hardware, maker projects for what has become known as the Internet of Things. However, with, dozens of development boards and hardware and soldering stations, everything, I don't own any mainstream Internet of Things devices. Outside of, I do own some smart speakers, which for me are really just music machines. Like I use it almost. In fact, I can't think of another timers. We use it for timers, and we use it for as a voice enabled jukebox. And so outside of that, I own no IoT products, mainstream IoT products. I don't have a Ring camera. I don't have any cameras for that matter. I don't have a smart thermostat. I don't have any smart outlets, smart light bulbs. I own none of that stuff, which is kind of interesting. Like I'm such an IoT enthusiast and I own none of those things. But that changed today. I bought what I'm not going to count the smart speaker. I can't say her name because she'll try to listen to me. She's listening to me anyway, by the way, just so we're all aware of that. But I don't really count that as an IoT device. It is an IoT device. I get it, but I put that in its own special kind of category. But I went to Home Depot today and wasn't planning on buying this. I was just they got me with like the good product placement. It was like right in the front door in the middle aisle, like you have to walk past it. And there were a bunch of cameras, but then there was this guy, the Wise Plug. And it was $9.95, under $10. Like I had to do it. And so I bought my first IoT device. And I'm already disappointed, not in the Wise Plug's performance, because I actually haven't even plugged it in yet. It's just sitting right here. But I'm disappointed when I opened up the instructions and it said setup. So this is a quick start guide to get set up. Step 1, download the Wise app and create an account. So here's the deal. I don't mind having an app, which, for this kind of thing, you kind of need to have an app for the most seamless and smooth user experience to have access to connect to it. But why do I need to create an account? Now, listen, like this isn't naive Kevin here. Like I understand why Wise wants me to create an account. I'm then a user and I can be upsold on things. And I mean, who knows? Honestly, I don't know. I could, with like a pie hole or something, if I wanted to spend the time, I don't figure out what kind of information this thing is sending back to Wise servers. I don't particularly care, but I hate it. I hate the idea that a switch, a Wi-Fi controlled switch, which is all this is. It may be Bluetooth as well. It doesn't mention Bluetooth in here. It says slow blue flashing light connecting to Wi-Fi. So it looks like it works over Wi-Fi. Maybe it has Bluetooth on it as well. But I know exactly what's inside of this thing. It's something like an ESP8266 that connects to your Wi-Fi automatically. We've been doing this the last few days on the stream, like connecting a Feather Huzzah or something to it. So it's that little bit of hardware and a way to interact with it on your phone. And so why do I need an account? I hate that. I hate that everything, and again, I'm not naive. I understand the business reason why, but I also hate the business reason why. Like, there is no reason that you need to have an account to turn a single outlet on and off with your phone. Like, makers have been doing this for years. We can make one of these in a weekend that turns our lights on and off. And so, I mean, I guess the real question is, well, then why don't you make one, Kevin? Like, that's a fair point. But I don't know. I wanted to try it. I was hoping it was as simple as just like an app. Again, I'm fine with having an app that used Bluetooth. Probably would be sufficient for this, but um, I guess with the app through the account, like I could turn this off from anywhere. I bet that's why we have a Wi-Fi. But even then, I would offer, so like if I'm out of my house, as long as I can connect to it, it can send a message down to it, and would be a reason to have a Wise account because they'd have servers that manage that. But um, I would prefer to be given the option to not do that. Like, hey, here's the device, here's the app. You can connect to it, turn it on and off to your heart's content within your house or within range of the Bluetooth if it's over Bluetooth. But you cannot control it outside of your house unless you create an account with Wise. Like, I would be okay with that approach. And to be fair, let's do it real quick. Let's download. I haven't even downloaded the app. Like, I turned on the camera to complain about having to create an account when I haven't fully confirmed that that's the case. Although the instructions do say that that's step one. So let's get the app. Hello, whoever joined. Welcome to the stream. Talking about my first IoT device that I bought after spending almost 2 decades personally developing Internet of Things devices. Wise. Okay. It's in the lifestyle category. Okay. Wise Home. I think I want just the regular Wise app. 3 stars out of 5. Not great. I guess I'm still like, while this is downloading, I'm still romantic about the idea of maybe somebody will come along and not over commercialize. Hardware's hard. It's expensive and it's really hard, and people don't want to pay. Like, I wouldn't have bought this if it was more than $10. Like, the $9.95 price tag got me. The problem with the $9.95 price tag is this stuff is really hard to support, to source, and to build at huge scales to be able to get that price. And then you've got to support all those devices, especially if you're going to have a remote option to it. You got to support backend services. And so I guess to me, we still haven't figured out the correct financial business model of Internet of Things in many cases. Like, people don't want to pay $5.99 or $9.99 a month for every single service. Pay $9.99 a month to switch these on and off. Pay $9.99 a month to open and close my garage door. Pay $9.99 a month to control my sprinklers. Like, that gets old really fast. And first of all, mainstream consumers just don't have enough to pay 20 people $9.99 a month. But also, the service isn't worth that, right? Like, it is super nice if I can turn my sprinklers on from my phone, but at the end of the day, I can just do it from the control panel, and I can set up schedules. We've been able to do that for decades, right, with the digital things. And so I still think we're working on the pricing business model of Internet of Things. Wise would like to send you notifications. Like, I don't want you to. Like, no, don't allow. Sign in, create account. Okay, so yes, you have to. There is no like, oh, I just like to use my device locally option. It forces you to create an account. And so, I just, like I said, I hate the idea. I wish, and these exist, right? And I guess I could probably go on to Alibaba and buy a non-connected one. But there is something about the, being, and this actually doesn't seem to be UL listed. At least it's not. I mean, if it was, I'm sure they would feature it on the case. But yeah, I don't know. $10, it's nice. I wish I could pay $10 and have a purely local. I don't have to create an account with you, and here's my $10, and you make however much profit on that as you're going to make, and I go on my way. So that's my thought on the Internet of Things. I will play with this later. The reason I actually bought this was our Christmas tree plugs in like behind the couch, and I would like a way to. I just thought, yeah, I'll put this on it, and I can turn it on and off with my phone or set a schedule or whatever fun stuff. So we will play with that later. Let's talk for a minute. I mean, really, I mostly wanted to get that rant out of me. Okay. So, what are we talking? Deploy the fleet today. So, like I said, we launched yesterday. And in doing that, we, posted all the social media places that we were going live and for people to check it out. Sorry, I can't talk and type at the same time, apparently. So it is up and going. What I would like to add to this is, first of all, I need people to use the service. Like, goal number one right now is get users and then get feedback. Get those users to provide feedback, whether like, hey, I think it's harder to get hey, this is great. This is exactly what I needed and what I was looking for, and it's doing just what I need it to do. Most people don't share that feedback, I feel. It's normally, and just as helpful at this point of the game, by the way, is the feedback of like, this thing is a piece of garbage because A, B, C, and D, and it doesn't do X, Y, and Z. And that helps, you get enough of that to determine, oh, we need to add this feature. We need to add this feature. And so I'd like to do my best to get both sides of those, because if people are enjoying it, I'd like to know so that it's not just out there in the void. And a lot of that you can tell, like if you have active users, and I can look at the data, like are people signing up for it, and are people creating firmwares, and are devices checking in. I can look at some of that data to see, oh, people are actively using it, even though they're not saying that it's helpful. So let's first thing, oh my goodness, got the burps again. Let's look at, first of all, to see if anybody has signed up. I wouldn't at this point expect anybody to have signed up for the service, despite putting it out like, you put it on Facebook and your aunt says that she loves it. Like, that's nice and I appreciate it, but my aunt is not a target user of the service that I've been building. So I need two-factor auth here. Okay. And we will just go and see if we have any new user accounts. Like I said, I'm not expecting any. I would be pleasantly surprised if there were. Because what we really need, yeah, okay, no. And that's fine. What we really need to do now is target the message to people. Like, I need to find like the ESP32, ESP8266 threads on Reddit. Reddit's a tough one. Like, you want brutal honesty, Reddit is your source for that. Like, you'll get it. And so I'll post it on there, and then just finding really every single place that I can find where people are talking about ESP32 or ESP8266 projects. I want to throw in a plug. Try not to make it too salesy, because I'm not really at this point selling anything. The service is free for people to use, but let people know, hey, this is a thing. Here's what it does. Here's some information about it, and it would be nice if you check it out and use it and let me know what you think. And so that is kind of what I'm working on right now. There's not going to be a lot of dev, at least for a few days. I am working on, there's a couple of things that features, like blatantly obvious missing features that I would like to work on over the next couple of days. One of which, by the way, you can see that like after multiple reboots, it logged me right in, because we're now storing sessions in DynamoDB. That's what we worked on yesterday. So that's working like a champ. But one of the big things that's missing is if we come into here, and this is bound to happen because I've done it lots of times working through the service. When you upload a firmware and then you realize, oh crap, I missed something. First of all, there's no way to edit a firmware. So if I click on this, and say, shoot, I meant for this to be 3.0.1. I can't change it here. So we lack an edit. I can't change the release notes. There's no way to edit the firmware. But even more so, a duct tape way around that is, well, we won't allow you to edit it because most of those mistakes are going to happen right after you upload. Like you'll realize you spelled release wrong. And it's like, oh, shoot, you're not going to go back to a 2-month-old firmware and be like, oh, I meant the firmware version was different or the note was different. And so the way to get around that is I'd like to enable a delete on the firmware. So like if you make a mistake like that, like, there's no edit for now, we'll get there, but just delete it and re-upload it is the next, feature. It's weird to say deleting something's a feature, but it is a feature. Right now it's not included. So that's going to be the next sort of coding thing that we'll do. I'm not going to work on that today. Work on that another time. But for anybody that watches this, if you do ESP8266 or ESP32 project development in any way, like I would really appreciate it if you'd give it a try. Try to upload some firmware, see how the flow works for you, how easy it is to switch between firmwares just by using the service, by clicking on one of them and setting it as the default or uploading new ones. Even if you don't feel like it's a feature you need, if you've got some spare cycles to just test something out for another maker on the internet, that would be awesome. So we've got to work on that. And then the other thing I think where I was going with that was I'd like to, ultimately, I want this to be a paid service. I just rewind 5 minutes, talked about paid services being the worst. However, I feel in this case, like this is a business proposition of you managing a fleet of devices, not trying to turn your Christmas tree on and off for $10 a month. Like I'm providing a storage location and logic, hopefully to a point of advanced logic of helping, do deployment rings for updates and things like that. And so be like you're paying for your accounting software as a business. This is a service that I would like to charge for, but I need to figure out what those tiers are. And so that's sort of the next part of this is figuring out my business model after just raking over the coals, the business model of other IoT device makers. Like what's my business model and value proposition and how do I want to charge for that? I have right here on the homepage prominently featured free for makers. And I want that to always be the case, but having been that maker myself forever, I know that there's not a huge, limiting that to a certain number of devices is more than enough. Like you can offer an ample free tier that shouldn't be an issue for the long-term health of this. And but then deciding like after that, initial free tier, like what are they? So for example, I'm talking in vague statements here. Like right now, the big thing is number of devices that connect to the service, number of products you can create in the service, which isn't a huge deal. And so I think, and then firmware, like, so what are the things that cost me money? Bandwidth and storage. So storing firmwares, and storage is fairly cheap, but the more firmware you upload, the more storage costs you incurred. So do you take the approach of most people are gonna, and I don't have any data on any of this, right? So like I can't even say like what's the average size and number of firmwares that a customer would upload, but is it fair to charge the same amount to the person who has 10 firmwares to the person that has 100 firmwares? And the storage cost difference on that is probably negligible. And so there's a couple of different pricing tiers that we could explore here. We could say, you're charged for storage of firmware just on an ongoing basis, which would encourage people to clean up super old ones that they don't need anymore, but also creates an extra burden of task on them. Oh, if you don't want to pay for it, you got to delete them. And I also hate the model of, oh, I just hope people upload a lot of firmwares and forget about them and we can charge them, I can mark it up and, make a huge margin on dead firmware like that. I hate that. I know that that's like a corporate business thing to do of like, don't tell them that they're paying you money for it and they don't need to. I feel bad about that. Like I would either have to remind people, hey, you're paying for firmwares that are this old and have not been used. Would you like to delete them? Like I don't know. I believe in being good to people and doing the right thing by them. And so storage cost is one, but really number of devices I think is the big one. Um, Regardless of how many firmwares you have uploaded, like how many devices do you have on an ongoing basis and how often are they checking in? For example, my the pucks and the puck holders, they only check in once every, you know, at most back to back when there's a game, back to back nights. But normally it's like 2, 3 days. So once every 2, 3 days, whereas you might have something else checking in for updates every one day. I don't know how often you'd really want to trigger a check for update, but it all depends on how you integrate it with your hardware device. And then the number of those devices. Do you have 100 devices checking in every day? Do you have 10,000 devices checking in every day? That's a big difference. And I think the value of this service, and if you can't tell already, I'm going to let you in on a secret. I'm still working through this in my head. Like I'm still working through like, how do I want to position this right now? I'm just trying to get it out to people, get people to use it. And it provides a really handy service in its current state. Updates over the air through a web interface that you don't have to worry about where the firmware is stored. You don't have to worry about how it's stored. You don't have to worry about the website hosting to have an endpoint for your devices to hit. Like all of that is already taken care of in the service as it exists today. But like positioning for it long term, like what's the real value add that I want to bring? And I think most of that is around device deployment and management. Like, how do we do this? Just like with software, how do we do like a ringed deployment? How do we pick a small chunk of users and how do we choose those users to test a new firmware release? And then once it passes certain benchmarks, it goes into a bigger ring of, it starts with 5 people, then it goes out into 50, and then it goes out into 500, if you have a lot of devices that you're managing. And so I think another option for pricing is per device and not per device. Like some of the I call them competitors, but there's not really. Most of those are done on things like Yocto Linux and Raspberry Pi. They use containers for deploying OTA updates, which they are. It is over the air and it's updating, but I mean, it's running a full Linux distro. And so it's not the same as like flashing binaries to an MCU like we're doing here. And so, and some of those services do charge per device. They charge per device to onboard them. So like if you were to sign up for Deploy the Fleet under that model, it's like, oh, you have 10 devices. It's 99 cents per device to onboard it into the system. So that's $10. And then other services charge per update. So every time you have a firmware update, it's this much per device. And so that's an option. And so there's a lot of different pricing things. People generally, I think, like the pay what you use. But how complicated will that get and how quickly? Where it's like, okay, well, I don't want to turn into AWS for a service that's not meant to be AWS, where it's like, oh, your storage bill for this month with firmware is this much, and your device count is this much, and your device updates were this much. And even just having said that sentence, maybe that is the approach I want to take. Like I'm not sure. That's going to be a lot harder to implement. I mean, I need to have a lot of data really locked down to charge for that, and charging on what, like especially the storage. Like if you deleted them during the month and having to do math around that, I'd have to think about that. So anyway, I'm still very much thinking through the pricing scheme, but I want to get something up on the site soon-ish to imply that it's not just for makers. I think that's where I just talked. You had a brain dump from me there of like what are the things I'm thinking about as I launch this, but what I'm really, the point of all that is that right now you might be under the impression that this is only good for makers and that it is nothing more than a free toy service, and that's not my intention. My intention is for it to be very helpful for makers to use and free for them to use, because I love the maker community and I want to support it. But also, oh, you have a company that has 400 devices and you need a way to manage updates that's not having people do it through, complicated terminal instructions, and you would just like to have this approach instead. Like, I have an offering for you as well, and this is how much it's going to cost you. And I don't feel like I have to have that all fleshed out at this point, but I do want at least a page. Like what I'm going for is up here, I want to have a pricing, and I want to have at least a first stab at how I would like to try to price this. And even as a complete, like, punting the issue, have like this is the free maker tier, which includes, and then set and decide on what those limits are, like 5 devices, 10 devices, whatever it is, unlimited firmware, unlimited updates, whatever it may be, or 100 updates. I don't know, like whatever it is, like define really well the maker category. And then even if I wanted to punt the other ones and just say like, call for pricing or inquire for pricing, and it's an email to me, and have somebody reach out and just tell me, what they're working on or doing. And then I can, think on my feet and decide, well, let's see, let's just throw out this number and see what they say. So I'm navigating all this. This is how I am starting this. I'm not an MBA, a salesman, or a businessman. I'm doing my best to create a service that's valuable to people. This is where DHH would say, create something that is helpful to people and solves a problem, and charge them money for it. And that's where I'm trying to take Deploy the Fleet going forward. So that, man, I just talked your ear off for almost half an hour. I think that is going to do it. Like I said, I haven't really thought about what I want to work on right this second, so I'm not going to bore you with me thinking through that. But those are kind of all the things that I'm thinking about and going through. And also, if you're interested on Instagram, I'm on Instagram at SidwarKD, doing some story if like you want to, if you care to know how the Wise works out. I'm going to work on that, setting that up. I'll create an account with Wise. So that's going to do it for the stream today. I just wanted to pop on and share a few thoughts that are going through my head, because it's all the whole point of all this is sharing the process, like I took this idea from nothing a few months ago, and now I've released it, and now we have to do more work to get it into the hands of people. So I'm sharing all of it, all of the journey that others may find interesting or amusing or whatever. Maybe you don't care. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see everyone next time.